Bombad, Bombad.
To the Bombadcast.
Welcome to the Bombadcast. It is me, Jerry, and I am stoked to talk about this. If you can't already notice, there's a big logo to my left, and it's right there. I'm looking right at it. I don't know if my eyes are matching, but it looks like it is. We are part of the Beyond the Blast Doors network. Yes, I'm sure you've heard of us. That's why you're here. We are associated with 5 other really great podcasts, including Around the Galaxy with Pete Fletcher. We got Postcards from Galaxy's Edge with Shannon Morin. The Holo Chronicles with Josh and Andy. We've got Beyond the Blast Doors Live with David Emiletti. And then we got Streaming Star Wars with Pete and Dave. They kind of do their own thing. And then on Saturdays, yours truly, Bombadio de Castillo. And we also have this thing called a website. They're new. It's the year is 1997. We're just figuring out the World Wide Web. And we've got this thing called beyondtheblastdoors.com where I, Jerry, other people contribute to. We've got articles. We've got fun little blurbs about certain things. And you can come check us out. And we also have this thing called a Patreon. Yes, that's where you give us our money, our deserved money. So do what you're doing. Stop what you're doing right now, this very moment, and go sign up for a Patreon through us, and we get money from you because we deserve your money. And yeah, Jerry loves money. And I do too, and we need it. And yeah, so make sure you follow us on Twitter as well. If you're going to do all that, I think we'll be good. We can actually start our show. And on today's show, I've got a really good friend of mine named Jerry Cable right here. And I also have another good friend coming up in just a moment. Jerry, how you doing? You doing okay?
I'm doing pretty good, buddy. I'm hanging out here, you know. I'm if there's one thing that I want to do on a Saturday, on a Saturday, pre-recording, ruin the magic. It is talk about Star Wars, right?
What?
Okay, if it's any day of the week, man. What day of the week do I have a pulse? I want to talk about Star Wars. But why don't you have coming on the show tonight a good friend of yours, a good friend of Eric's. Soon to be good friend of mine, and also a guy who's got excellent taste in T-shirts. So why don't you go ahead and give a wonderful introduction?
All right. So on this week's show, we have a very well-studied friend of mine, and actually a friend of Eric's growing up. One would even call Eric's we would call Troy Eric's best friend, but Eric does not like to use the term best friend. We've all had this conversation with the strange man himself. But Eric Ottoman's really good closest friend from bygone days of youth, Troy Henderson, is on the show. And Troy is a huge Star Wars fan, and he actually pitched the idea for this episode. So we're going to give a good Bombadcast welcome to the new one and only Troy Henderson. How we doing, Troy?
Dude, I'm doing very well. I'm really happy to be on the show. What's up, Bombad fam? It's great to become part of the Bombad canon. It makes me so happy. And Jer Bear, I gotta say that your shirt game is on point.
It is, and we didn't want to look too similar, so we picked different colors.
Yeah, different colors.
This was totally orchestrated ahead of time. Yes. Completely.
We did it on purpose.
Yeah.
Completely preconceived. They talked more about this than the podcast, and it was weird.
I, in true Canon Junkie form, I haven't done any preparation for the topic tonight. I just thought about the R2D2 shirts, right, and stuff. Scotty, you look like you want some Wheaties there, buddy.
Oh, I have on me right now. I didn't tell you about this yet, Troy. Katie found this today at a secondhand store in Louisiana called Dirt Cheap. She found a Keebler. Okay, if y'all can see it,
Keebler elves. No way.
A jean jacket. Wait, let me get it full screen for y'all.
So you wear the exact same size as the guys who make the cookies in a tree?
Yep, yes, I am a short dwarf. But this is where it gets very peculiar, okay? It's not just a Keebler jean jacket. It is from a tour back in the 90s, okay? I don't know if y'all can see it. It's literally the Unbeatable Weedables country tour of 1994. I have no idea.
Who headlined that?
Okay, you won't even believe this. Is there a tag?
Is the tag still on it?
Tag still on it. No.
It's comedic gold.
Hey, that's how you know. That's how you know.
Who headlined it? You asked,
fancy,
Troy?
Right?
You're gonna. This is gonna shock you. Who headlined it?
If you guys are listening to audio only, y'all are missing out on some.
Yes.
We are
Thank you.
We are a YouTube show now, so there are visual gags.
Okay.
The
headliner of this tour was a native to Louisiana, our very own Tim McGraw. I kid you not, headlined this tour in 94 with two other, I think one very obscure band, but I forget the other one as well. It's just so bizarre that this even exists, and now I am the owner of it. I bet this was Tim McGraw's. I bet this belonged to him.
That looks very Tim McGraw.
He dropped it off at Dirt Cheap before he left. Like, I don't need this anymore.
Oh, it's great. It's great. But yeah, so with, like Jerry said earlier, no preparation for this episode on Jerry's part, but Troy prepared a lot, okay?
I've prepared my entire life for this episode.
Yeah, this is his, what do they call it? Whenever the Jedi have to go through their training, they call it the Jedi.
Trials.
Yes, this is the trials for Troy.
Come on, Star Wars podcast host.
But before we start, there we go. Before we start, I have to ask a question like we ask all of our guests, Jerry, or we should ask all of our guests, their best, favorite, and most fun. So, Troy, we've always given ours, but this time we're going to take a seat, and you're going to tell us your best, favorite, most fun. And yes, they're in a particular order. You got to make sure you give us the best one first, then your favorite, then the most fun. Are you ready, Troy?
Otherwise, you just know better than me and Scotty, and you want to be better than us.
Yes.
So I think.
All right, Troy, what's going on?
I think the best is unequivocally this guy right here, Empire Strikes Back. I think that Star Wars, like the original Star Wars or A New Hope, depending on like how old you are and how grumpy you are about the title A New Hope, is certainly like that's the original. It kicks everything off, but I think Empire and everything that like is Luke and Yoda training, everything that is Han and Leia's romance, and C-3PO walking around, come on, Goldenrod, you're going to be a permanent resident. Everything about Empire, I think, is where Star Wars truly came into his own. So I think that one's the best in terms of story, in terms of all of it. Is it a cop-out to say that my favorite is Empire if I've said that it's the best? So
we have no rules.
But I think Empire's my favorite just because I love Yoda so very much, and that really is a significant part of his character is training Luke. But I've got such a special place in my heart for Return of the Jedi that if I had to pick something different, then it is unquestionably Return of the Jedi.
Can't hear you, Scott.
Sorry, I don't know. My mic was muted. Sorry about that. Return of the Jedi, Troy, is also my favorite, and I was watching it last night and a little bit this morning and today. The fact that like I don't know, you get a whole Mandalorian episode before the movie starts. Like the whole Jabba sequence is just like a Mandalorian episode in terms of like pacing and weirdness. Like they've really that I think is just one of my favorite parts is you get a mini short before you get to the indoor, and then you get the huge ending. And
I love the Ewoks, not because not because like I think they're adorable or anything, but like the silliness and the absurd. Like people are like, how did Ewoks, beat the 501st, the best, an entire legion of my finest troops, how dude, it's ridiculous. And it's that's what Star Wars is. It's ridiculous.
Yeah, I agree.
It's the will of the Force and, things that are alive triumphing over space Nazis. And that's what it is.
Yes.
And just let it be that.
Yeah. 100%.
Amen. Amen.
It's got such a positive feel to it. It's a very optimistic movie. There's some sad parts, as there should be, but like it's definitely the one that's most George Lucas-y. Like it's super George, just in terms of like little stuff, like when the Ewok dies or when Malakili's crying over the dead Rancor. Like that's so weird and so George, but it just works,
He does love people mourning over dead people. That's really what George loves. So
yes.
I mean, that's fair.
Yeah, it is fair. Now, Troy, the last one's important because I think us being a child of the prequels, we were little children of the prequels. That's weird. Little kids in the prequel era. I feel like your most fun is going to be something from there. I don't even know. I've never asked you this question. So, Troy.
I think you know me well enough, and you are right in that regard. And I think it's going to make you guys happy because it's in terms of most fun. It's got like all of them are fun, and there's so many like what y'all talked about with Ken Knapsack and the DNA of Star Wars and all that. Like everything y'all listed, I was just like, that's so great. That's so great. Oh, that one. Oh, that one. Oh, that one. You could have done that for like a week. Just talked about all the little things and make it fun.
With that dude,
we do it every week, right? No,
but most fun has got to be Phantom Menace, man. Like the pod racing, like it's so very Ben-Hur and like, but like way more exciting, and and then Jar Jar, jumping into the pond, and then you get the which is very Star Wars to cut from space battle to lightsaber battle to like people shooting around. But you get four. You get the Gungan battle. You get the Theed battle. You get, I'll try spinning. That's a cool trick. And then you get. And then
I unabashedly love all of that.
Which is right. And then Kylo spins in The Last Jedi, and it's fantastic.
Yes, it's so good.
It all rhymes.
It does.
It's poetry. It does rhyme.
It's poetry.
I agree, Troy. It's got something to it and even the marketing was fun. Like as a kid, I vividly remember like Taco Bell stuff and the Pepsi stuff. Like it was all fun. Troy's looking for something. What is it, Troy? What you got?
Well, this was actually Revenge of the Sith. Was my little Darth Maul and Obi-Wan watches from Burger King. You remember
nice.
those?
The watches.
Yeah.
Actually, just brought a bunch of those from my house in Arkansas. Like I have them in a suitcase.
And then I still got this guy, Qui-Gon's lightsaber.
Nice.
You talking about the Phantom Menace? I was telling you this earlier, Scotty. Like my 6th, 5th, whatever it was. It was the birthday that was in time for it to be coming out on VHS. So it was after it had been released in theaters. Was Phantom Menace themed, and I got like all sorts of Phantom. This is the only one that survived the flood out of all of those toys that I got for that birthday party. But I had like a Jedi costume, and there was a thing that you could loop behind your ear, and it had a braid.
I had the Halloween costumes that year. They sold just like Jedi braids. I had one of those. Just clipped it in your hair. Oh,
I did not know that.
Yeah, and so
it's so 90s. So 90s.
And so part of it is definitely like I was a child when that came out, and just like, nothing is ever more fun than when you're just a kid and you have no reserves. You're not old enough to be like, a middle schooler and wonder like, oh, is Star Wars cool anymore? Like, can I only talk about baseball or, things like that? And I was the kid that was like, can I talk about both? But
it's just
and so awesome. It's so pure, and so part of it definitely is that, but I think it holds up.
It does.
Oh, absolutely.
And it's funny because that's the one that everyone's like, that's the worst Star Wars. Blah, blah. I actually like it significantly more than Attack of the Clones. I think Attack of the Clones gets, and I love, you and I have talked about this plenty. I absolutely am a prequel defender, whatever you want to call it. But I do think Attack of the Clones gets bogged down by the dialogue, which is George's pitfall in the prequels. The love dialogue is terrible, even though that one is so much fun too. But Phantom Menace, even now, like all that's holding its back is Jar Jar, and I am not affronted by Jar Jar still to this day.
Yeah,
that's awesome.
There's no reason to be.
Internet, I'm not.
Yeah. Come at us. Hold on one sec.
You can find me on my non-existent Twitter.
Can you hold on? I got a call here. Can you analyze this blood sample for me, please? I'm gonna put it in the bottom of the phone now. It doesn't even have batteries in it, but you guys are talking about Phantom Menace, and I brought my Comtech chip reader from home. So,
do you still have the chips for them?
What's that? Actually, there's a razor inside of this. There's a razor. Yeah, there is. No, I'm just kidding. It would be funny if they actually is like it reads those little microchips, and it also holds your dad's razor. So,
bring it to school.
Not now, Obi-Wan. Not now. I gotta go.
See, Scotty and I are old enough to where it wasn't your dad's razor; it was your razor.
Yeah. That's amazing. No, well, now that you've heard Troy and where he stands on all the movies, it's best known that Troy is the one that develops this idea, this concept for today's episode, and it's called the philosophy of the Force, right? And with all that being said about it, we've got a lot of things that come to mind as a listener and as a podcaster. Like I thought of like so many different things as to what this could really ultimately mean. And I think for anyone that loves Bombadcast or is a regular listener, we might continue this as a series, and Troy's episode will be the first to kick it all off, because I think this idea is genius. I think it could be used with several different people. I mean, you've got all kinds of people that have been on Bombadcast, and each person has a very, very different opinion on the Force. But like, I thought about it earlier. If we had Ken Napzok back on to talk about this, it would be great, because he has a very, Ken is very philosophical when it comes to Star Wars, and like his approach is so deep. But then imagine if we had someone like Alex Damon on to talk about this, who's like very analytical and very studied. So I don't know. I think
he would just spend the entire hour talking about Biggs' stash. That's all he would do.
How it's Force sensitive. Yeah.
No, Biggs is still alive. He's a Force ghost. He's a Force ghost.
Yeah. And hey, we can bring that up today. But Troy, essentially, when you developed this concept, what was your ultimate, I guess, goal by the end of this? Like, what do you want to achieve with this conversation, essentially, Troy?
Well, first off is, the Force is why Star Wars matters. I mean, there's so many, like we just talked about Yell's DNA of Star, like the fun moments, the humor, the action, the fantasy, the romance, like all of it that is what makes Star Wars significant to us as people and why we watch it. That's all there, but I don't think that any of that works nearly as well without the Force. This idea that Star Wars is ultimately about, what we value, and the way that we view the world and how we are making our way through the world and what guides that. And is there something else that is sort of guiding us out there? And, and how do we follow that thing? Do we follow it? Do we use that for good or for evil and all those things? So I'd love to just, sort of explore that. I'm going to talk a little bit religious influences that were very prevalent are very clear that George had. Not that he necessarily subscribed to like the Eastern mysticism and stuff that I'll talk about, but like that is very clearly there in the Force and in the Jedi and then the Sith. Talk a little bit about the difference between the Jedi and the Sith. Maybe we'll even get into, most Jedi to ever Jedi. I know that's a thing for you guys.
Hey, always.
I might have some thoughts on that. Based on, what is the Force, what does it mean to follow the Force, and things of that nature. So I think it's going to be a great time.
Yeah, I think it's,
man.
Here we go. That's the thing about you made it very clear that this is what makes Star Wars unique, and I mean, I love the Marvel films. I love Lord of the Rings. Any big franchise, if I've seen at least 2 of the movies in them, I love them, because it's a hard thing to achieve in world building and in storytelling and any sense of the way. But Star Wars, immediately from the first movie with A New Hope, the introduction of the Force was so cool and mysterious, with Vader, choking out old boy, and how you get, Obi-Wan describing the Force and what it means, and like something about the Force it's such a huge vernacular in pop culture. And like literally, I was joking with my principal, and she is probably the most disconnected from Star Wars. She's maybe seen one of them, just how she was. And literally, I was telling her about the podcast or something silly. And as I left the office, she's like, well, may the Force be with you. And like, and how awesome is, yeah. And then I joke, do I say, and with your spirit back to you? And she's like, yeah, I guess. I don't know. So I don't know. I think it's weird to think that this concept of the Force has been around for a long time. And it's cool to interpret what it means. And that's what I'm most excited about this episode for, is because I've never really talked about this at a deeper level. And I don't know. I think the nature of the Force is something that's going to be really fun to explore with each one of you. And I'm pumped. It's going to be great. It's such an important part of culture, you know?
It's funny. It's funny that you mention, your principal. Like, I have a folklore, I'm a teacher as well. Same diocese as Scotty, different school. And I have a whole unit on folklore and mythology for my students. And we definitely talk about Star Wars and the Avengers as a sort of modern iteration of like these same sort of themes and values.
You have to.
And we get into the sort of Joseph Campbell, Here with a Thousand Faces and Luke and all that. We get into that a little bit. And, it's like I said, it's, this is what makes Star Wars matter. This is the heart of it all.
Yeah, and Troy, this is gonna be funny because I can't wait to talk to you about this in a little bit. But I'm approaching it from a science perspective too. I just finished reading Plagueis, and Plagueis. I don't know if I'm not gonna give that many spoilers away, but it's all about the science aspect of the Force, and it kind of changed the way I saw midichlorians in terms of like James Lucena, who wrote it. Like, I don't even know if he talked with George about it, but my God, if it's not one of the greatest explanations he wrote the original he wrote the original Plagueis, the non-canon one. That's the one I'm talking about. Yeah, that's the one I listened to. Yeah. They haven't had a re-release officially of it, but I don't know if I know it's legends, but I'll get into that later, how it's so important. But I guess, I don't know, Troy, I don't know if you want to kick it off, or if Jerry, you want to kick it off, but I think the thing we want to kind of bring up first is the nature of the Force. What is it? What does that phrase mean? What is our philosophy on the Force, essentially, is what I want to get at. Troy, do you want to start this whole thing? What is your philosophy on the Force?
So, you got to go to the source material, right? You got to go to the films, and, what is the Force? It surrounds us, penetrates us, it binds the universe together. And, so it's this idea that, it's an energy field created by all living beings. And I think that's a really significant ideal, that it's this sort of, everything in the universe. And, you can look at, various religions and then even philosophies like panpsychism and things like that. This idea that imbued in the nature of matter itself, there is energy, and that energy, whether you want to interpret it, purely scientifically and talk about, the natural forces and all of the things like that, or if you want to talk about it from a far more spiritual perspective and talk about, how the fact that we're all, we all have far more in common than we do differently, and we're all connected and have things far more alike than that, and whether or not there is a sort of like non-physical substance to that connection or anything, it's your luminous beings are we, not this crude matter.
It's a pretty good Yoda, Troy. That's that awesome.
Thank you.
Pretty good.
When 900 years old you are, speak as well, you will do.
Yeah, I love everything you say, especially the part where it can be approached both from a science and a philosophical or a spiritual perspective. But Jerry, what is your philosophy in the Force? As someone who's a little bit older than Troy and I, how is the Force any different for you than it is, I guess, for me in that term? Because age does bring wisdom, and obviously very, very, very relevant handsomeness with Jerry.
Kid, I've flown from one end of this galaxy to the other, and I ain't never seen nothing that ever make me believe in any kind of mystical energy field controlling my destiny. That's not the exact quote, but no,
it's pretty close.
It's yeah. I was channeling. I could feel Harrison just like take over my being for a second.
That sounds spectacular, actually.
Yeah. Oh, it was chills, full body chills. and then I felt like I crashed a plane. I don't know. It was weird. I try and knock on wood. Be safe, Harrison. I don't. When I think about the Force, like I tend to. You really do tend to go to your belief system and kind of. That's again. It's how George. He designed it that way, right? For it to kind of pattern itself after most systems of morality, most religious systems, with a morality code or whatever, like with morals. You're supposed to get good stuff from it because, ultimately, most of religions will tell you, don't kill, don't be a jerk. Don't be a jerk, man. I don't know. My voice just started doing that. I don't know what that is.
Oh no,
I think it's called puberty.
I think it was pretty pure though. The don't be a jerk. Like it came from like the repressed memories of all Star Wars nerds.
It sounds like that dude from the teenagers from Monsters Inc. who's like, yes, Mr. Sullivan. Like, dude, you're making him lose his focus. Anyway, but no, you go back to your belief system, and I went to school for biblical studies and stuff. We're all of Christian faith and stuff, and all that kind of stuff. I said stuff twice, but anyway, so I look at the way I look at the Force is the way I look at my faith is both spiritual but also scientific. Because to me, I've always been, people have always kind of been like, oh, science and religion are constantly doing this and stuff. But really, it's all to me. It all again. There are people on both sides that definitely push their narratives and stuff, especially in our faith camp. And don't even get me started on the flat earthers. No offense if you're still listening to this, then
what if
hello,
like half your subscribers just
hello over there. What if they just left and like I guess it would be like
because they were all flat earthers.
Good, yeah. Good riddance, guys. If you're still listening, God bless your heart, and have just I love you to the big sun and moon mobile in the sky and back. Whatever. And the big dome that we're in, whatever. Derailing. But anyway, you look at people got upset, right? You get talking about, you're talking about how I'm a little older than you. I was just 12 when Phantom Menace came out. So again, that Phantom Menace, George Lucas sweet spot, right? It's like, I made this for 12-year-olds. Love that. I mean, George told me he loved me from the back of a Wendy's, like a cell phone video from the back of a Wendy's in the Phantom Menace panel. So I don't know if he did that to you guys, but he did.
Panel.
Yeah, I love you if you're here. I love you. But you got to think like people were upset, and again, I was a kid too when it came out. And I mean, I grew up. I graduated high school when Revenge of the Sith came out, but. I remember like after high school, people getting really upset about midichlorians, and the midichlorians are like a joke now and everything. Like all of those like things that like people bring up if you talk about like the prequels and stuff to anyone who is like vaguely like they think they're edgy, the edgelords and whoever, like I'm a Star Wars fan and stuff, but Phantom Menace, the Jar Jar Binks sucks, and the midichlorians, get that out of my Star Wars, and this, and if you feel that way, it's fine, but it's never bothered me because I've always seen the, and maybe it's growing up in church and stuff, and kind of learning about things and learning about stuff in school, and having this mindset that none of this like contradicts the other thing. It's just science just talks about process, right? We're learning. We want to learn how things work, and stuff. And I mean the why too, but for me, that's always worked with my faith in that respect and all that. And I don't mean to turn this into a religion podcast, but we're talking about philosophy, right?
It's going to get there, and there will be a defense of midichlorians as well.
Right.
Yeah, I have a PowerPoint. I have a PowerPoint.
Right. But I've always seen it though as like that, and it's like Luke talked about in TLJ, man. And TLJ's still my favorite, man. I just and honestly, I had it playing for a minute ago.
I love TLJ.
When you talked about Kylo spinning, it was like 40 seconds until he actually did it and stuff. So I turned it off because I was distracted, because that was like too perfect. But it's.
May have been the will of the Force.
Fancy. No, this whole so my whole philosophy on the Force though is just the balance, the tension. It's not necessarily light and dark, the tension between that, but the tension between what is natural to us and what is like beyond natural that can happen and stuff. Because the Force is almost like the power of nature, but it's the power of creation and all that stuff, but it is also malleable, and it can basically, if you learn to empty yourself, quiet your mind and stuff, and be at peace, or really hyper fuel your anger, like an edgelord, then you can tap into it and basically make your thoughts reality, right? Yeah. That's like what the Force is to me now, is less like I'm using this much power to lift this can, and it's more I am one with the Force enough. My mind is at peace enough to where I can visualize, like Leia, I can't be done yet. So it's basically the Force is willing yourself to do things, willing the universe to do things around you, to move the very atoms around you and stuff, and push you towards a ship and make a bunch of man babies cry and stuff because it looks like Mary Poppins. So
there we go. Good philosophy, Jerry.
Thank you.
Of course. No, but in all seriousness, my philosophy, or I guess the philosophy of the Force, is something that's so deep within, and something that you kind of take in as a kid. If you grew up watching these, like, it's so a part of your upbringing. Like, and people still do this. I see adults and children do this when they go to like a Target and they have the doors that slide open. I mean, everyone wants to do, like, it's like, let's be real. If the Force was a real thing that could manifest within each one of us, which on a spiritual level it might be, but in terms of the ability to use it, I mean, I don't know. It might be the seventh sense. It might be the sense that we're not quite aware of, the sixth sense, whatever the sense would be. This sense that none of us have tapped into yet. That could be something that'll happen down the line in our evolutionary development. But like, I think the Force is something that is both a way to ease your mind, but also, I don't know, it also is there to guide you, like there's choices I've made in the past 5 years that have all been really good choices, and they've come from prayer and meditation. They've also come for just almost manifesting it through my mind, not like a this kind of way, but in a sense of like, well, if I want to be, one of the best teachers at my school, I want to do the best and be able to go through Southeastern and achieve a better goal for myself. I feel like I'd have to really concentrate on it, make a very strong effort to be able to succeed in any of the endeavors, be it Bombadcast, be it my professional career, be it when I play guitar. It's just one of these things that I think, in a weird way, it's you're manifesting the Force within yourself. You are truly forcing yourself to go and achieve your goals. And I think the Force has this really impressive way of being something that we can often joke about. We can joke around the Force, whatever the Force means to Troy and Jerry and Eric and whoever. But when you kind of get down to it on a spiritual level, it's very interesting how deep this subject can get, because George made it very clear that he's making these Star Wars films, but for the future impact and what it will do for next generations and your current generation, and like, I think the kids that have watched The Force Awakens are going to teach us some lessons, in a big way one day. I really do. I think these kids are going to grow up and they're going to school us, and I'm looking forward to it. And that is the will of the Force. these people are going to take in new informations and they're going to be able to give it back to us. So I think ultimately the Force is what binds every generation of Star Wars fan, and it's yes, it binds.
I was gonna say binds them together.
There we go. And I think the Force is something that I can almost attribute to my own successes, and I'm sure everyone else can say the same exact thing, because it's a belief system. It's what you want to happen in your own life, and I think it's a cool. I think each person in this chat has approached it from a different perspective, and that's what's so interesting, and that's what keeps Star Wars such a thriving franchise. But
for a bunch of fake fans, we're okay.
We're okay. So Troy, when you developed this concept, you told me something about the nature of the Force, and I know Clone Wars has really been, for me, the show that has taught me more about the Force in terms of what is the nature of the Force? What does it even mean? So Troy, what was your approach to that concept? Why the nature of the Force? What does that mean to you?
Yeah. So starting, the word philosophy kind of gets you into trouble sometimes, because it usually gets used in one of two ways. One, which is the way we've been using it so far, which is this idea of it's a belief system, right? It's my philosophy on life. It's my view on something, and things of that nature. Then there is the actual academic philosophy, which is taking these non-empirical, non-scientifically provable, but still fundamental issues. Is there a God? Is there a right way to live your life? All these things, and trying to be as empirical and logical as possible and answer those and be succinct in those. So this sort of, and that, in terms of academic logic and reading paragraphs and paragraphs of argument, I'm not trying to get into that right here. I'm more trying to talk about more, the nature of things. What is the stuff that we encounter in Star Wars? And what does it say about what we value as people?
Sure.
So the nature, what is the nature of the Force? You go back to Yoda. He says, luminous beings are we, not this crude matter. This idea that it exists in everything and it combines together. You mentioned the Clone Wars. I love the 3-episode arc with Yoda where he goes where Qui-Gon's voice reaches out to him.
Yes.
And he meets, and then he goes and he meets the priestesses, and then he goes to the Sith homeworld that isn't Exegol, because that wasn't confusing enough already for all the
and it wasn't Korriban either, right?
It was
more.
Well, they just changed the there's always a little bit of truth in legends. When Ahsoka says that in Rebels, I was just I see what you did there.
See what you did there.
I'm so proud of you, Dave.
Clever Dave.
So proud of you, Dave. Anyway, anyway, within that you get within that 3-episode arc, and I love it because it's all about lore building and it's about Yoda, who probably is my favorite character. It's about him sort of figuring out, setting the stage, bridging the prequels to the original trilogy, and it's also really George's last word on Star Wars and the lore of Star Wars.
That is true.
He didn't make another movie after that. The 7 seasons of Clone Wars he wasn't involved with. I'm sure he had. I'm sure Dave reached out and talked to him about some stuff. I'm convinced that that's happened, but he didn't get any word, and he talked to JJ and Rian Johnson, to whatever extent. But that is his last, that is the last word that he has on what the nature of the Force is, and I think that it's some really powerful stuff. And one of the thing, as a sort of religious studies and philosophy nerd and a Star Wars nerd, I just ate it all up with a spoon.
Yeah.
When Eric and I were watching that season on Netflix together. And one of the most profound things that they say is, Qui-Gon says it, and then the priestesses elaborate on it more, is that the Force exists in two parts, and they don't mean light side and dark side. They talk about the living Force and the cosmic Force.
Cosmic Force.
And I was this is so cool. And the idea that the living is like what we had all heard, like that it's an energy field created by all living things, but that life force that, you know, is created by, you know, life itself powers the cosmic force. And then the, you know, the cosmic force, which I sort of interpreted, they don't say a whole lot about the nature of the cosmic force. Qui-Gon says, and that is how I speak to you. And all this, like, I interpreted that more of as like the, you know, the physical, you know, the scientific, you know, you were talking about, Scotty, aspects of the universe itself. What binds everything together? The natural forces, you know, gravity, the strong force, the weak force, and all that kind of stuff, the laws of nature. And then, and then that in turn creates new life, creates a habitable place where life can flourish, and that they and they cyclically power each other in a series of, you know, yin and yang and things of that nature, which we can get into more later. But that's what I think of the nature of the force, is that everything, there's push and that there's pull and there's balance, and through sort of tapping into that balance, you know, Jedi or Sith can like understand and then manipulate the cosmic reality that they find themselves in with, you know, telekinesis and astro projection or whatever. What is there an official canon, Jerry the Canon Junkie? Is there an official term for Luke appearing in another place, the bilocation?
Force Skype. No, that's what Ray and Kylo were doing.
I was about to say that's a different thing.
That's I mean, they even expanded on that crazily. But not that I know. I think force projection, I think, is the closest thing we have. I think it's force projection because that's
regardless,
it's like astral projection, but.
But being in tune to the living force allows you through the cosmic force to, you know, extend your life after death or to move things with your mind and all that kind of stuff. And I think that's wild, man. You know,
it's awesome.
George Lucas I was like, well, you know, I'm gonna change the world right here and create a religion that people will treat as an actual religion.
Isn't it? Is it? It's actually a protected religion in the UK, right? Or it's like an actual. Is it here too?
I mean, Jediism is a thing, and they have, you know, Jediism.
Jediism is my side piece. So it's my side hustle. So.
Well, you know, that sounds like attachment and the shadow of greed. That is.
Oh, dang it. Man, I knew I was doing something wrong.
It's weird because, you know, this whole discussion, especially dealing with the biggest, it's like it's one of these things that's an overarching topic, but it can be taken in almost any direction because it is really all about perspective in terms of like you said, Jedi and Sith. I mean, the Force is all one thing. There is a dark side, but that dark side can almost be a little bit clouded with the light side of the Force, because like one of my favorite moments in Return of the Jedi is when Luke walks in and he doesn't force choke. He does something to the throats of the Gamorrean guards, and he keeps walking. And I'm like,
they were allergic to peanuts. They were allergic to peanuts, and he made them think that they had.
Because you need that visual cue. You need that visual cue to go, oh, Luke's all in the dark. He's got the hood, he's got Vader's silhouette as the thing open. You need that visual cue to go, Luke is going to be is he maybe? We left him off at Empire, and he was like talking to his dad, and the only thing is like, Ben, why didn't you tell me? Not like, Ben, how am I going to get through this? Ben, how am I going to defeat my father? It's Ben, why didn't you tell me? It's not, you don't know where he's at, you know, emotionally and spiritually. And so then you have that cue, which like George Lucas, you know, you may knock him for his dialogue, and, you know, that might be fair. But you cannot knock the way he tells stories visually. Like he does it better than I think anyone else ever has.
100%. Otherwise, we're not here, right?
Yeah.
No, I love that scene. Matt Martin was talking about that, and now we don't have to dissect this, but like I think he was talking about that where he like basically pushed them or something. But like he definitely, like, I don't know. I like to think that he's a little like, you know how Rey kind of flirts with the dark a little bit.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
Well, your protagonist has to, otherwise where's the conflict?
Right. You know, and so that's, you know, Anakin did it, you know, when he was a good Jedi, and
he didn't just flirt with it. He did something else with it.
Oh, he was courting it. He was courting it. Yeah. Well, I mean, he was seeing it behind Padme's back. So yeah.
And that's interesting because Anakin's one of the few characters that's the pinnacle of what it means to be both dark and light. I mean, he he was the one that's supposed to bring balance to the Force, and that's a whole different discussion as to what the hell that even means. Because then apparently in The Rise of Skywalker, he's even like, bring back the balance, Rey, as I once did. And so not right now, now. But it is important, because I don't think the Forces could ever be balanced in terms of what that even means. But like this whole concept of the Force being something that's very natural is so cool, because I think with each consecutive movie or show or whatever release of a book, this idea of the Force gets, I guess, more layered. And like, obviously with A New Hope, it was very, very, very not relevant. I'm sorry. It was very obvious that it was just kind of a basic thing. Like, use the Force, Luke, when he's using the speeder, like believe in yourself, when he launches the ion bomb. But then when you get to Empire Strikes Back, you got Yoda elaborate more on it. And then you see the antithesis of that with Palpatine in Return of the Jedi. So each movie is just like, bam, 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 bam. Here's this new thing. Mm-hmm. And I think the biggest one so far, trust me, the sequel trilogy did amazing things for it. But now we're almost getting the Force from a very different perspective with The Mandalorian, because the whole approach to it was so unexpected. And the fact that we are learning more about the species that Yoda also belongs to may be some sort of Force-sensitive race. And how is that possible? And we learned that the Force is something that you can exert yourself using, which we didn't know that was a thing at all to begin with. We had no idea, except for when Luke dies in TLJ, that he overexerted. He gave himself to the Force, essentially. But like with little dude, saving Mandalorian from the Mudhorn, that was one of those moments in like canon where I'm like, this makes me rethink everything, because this child has had no formative training, and it's very obvious that he willed that Mudhorn with his heart. Like, he knew that this thing was going to hurt the guy that's been protecting me, and he knew somewhere. I think it's also a moral thing. I think when you go down to it, to your core, the Force is something that's very moral. So I don't know. I feel like each movie has done something new for it. And I don't know if y'all want to share the movie that maybe opened your eyes to the Force the most, but I can almost say for me, it's TLJ and The Mandalorian. Those are the ones that made me challenge my thinking on the Force. Like, it really did. And like what it really means, and why is it so important? Why is it so mystical still? I guess it's a really beautiful thing that as a fan, we can watch it from different perspectives now. It used to be very finite. You got these 3 movies, then you got these 6 movies, then you got these 9 movies, and now you get a show like The Mandalorian.
TV shows.
Yeah, you're like...
Well, even when Clone Wars, even before the
yes.
Disney era, Clone Wars, man. I mean, like we were just talking, there's so much in that. Like, it's ridiculous in the best way, like George just like coming in with Filoni and saying, all right, let's play. It's crazy. But I think Clone Wars taught me a lot about the Force, but also TLJ and stuff. I mean, TLJ is the big one that's like, what it was like a good dissection of what is the Force, like what really is the point of the Jedi, and that pissed a lot of people off, right? But again, I think we talked about this, I forget when, but like I feel like TLJ was a good deconstruction of what Star Wars is about, with a firm, resounding, triumphant ending of yes, the Force and being a Jedi is all about this and stuff. That's the thing people don't get. Like Luke was like, the Jedi are going to end, and then all of a sudden, hey, no, this doesn't need to end. It's something that I feel very personally about and stuff too. Again, with my own, again, not to get too crazy personal, but my faith and all that kind of stuff. Like, yes, people have taken the Jedi have done bad things in the name of their religion, right? They basically became like we're with like we're working for the government. We are the like it was like a government funded kind of a thing almost. It seemed like they were like basically like they could go in there, but it was weird and stuff. And and then you have basically it mirrors to me real life where like people have done bad things in the name of any religion, right? Mainly Christianity, and other whatever. But it's just, I don't know. It's that TLJ really it hit me at the right moment. Yeah. Where I was having kind of my life was at a moment where I was a little bit of crisis and stuff, but it was what I needed to see. I needed to see Luke Skywalker doubting the Force, doubting the Jedi, and then having that big triumphant at the end. I believe in this so much, and that Rey is going to continue. It almost said Jay. I don't know why. That Rey is going to continue this, and it needs to continue. That I'm going to give my life for it. Yeah, that is So that I would TLJ. It's hard to not pick TLJ. Empire has a lot of great stuff too. But
I was going to say
for me, TLJ.
Troy, what would be the movie that kind of transformed your outlook on the Force and what it means? Because Empire is the one that I think is what hooked everyone initially. Like, A New Hope establishes it, but I think Empire is the one that's like, oh, now I kind of see what this could mean from a fantasy perspective.
Would it be possible to save my answer for when we get into the most Jedi to ever Jedi conversation, and then I'll factor it in there, because I think that it's significant to that.
Okay, cool,
absolutely.
Yeah. Well, like I don't know. There's a moth in my office. I've taken so much time to like consider, what even the Force is, and like some movies don't really do it that much justice. But the weirdest one to me, the one that like changed my thinking, especially in terms of midichlorians, like was literally Revenge of the Sith, and how it was like they kind of showed the Force vision, really good there in terms of like Anakin seeing the death of Padme, and how this is an interesting thing here. We have Anakin pretty much getting a message from the Force that Padme will die in childbirth. But what the Force doesn't tell him is if you go down this path, you will cause this death. You will be the sole reason.
I subscribe to the theory that Palpatine was giving him those visions.
And that also could be the case, because it's definitely noted that Palpatine has done that with people. Is giving them dark vision.
And I wonder, he does it to Kylo. I'm every voice you've ever heard in your head. Mm-hmm. When he's sitting down with the Darth Vader helmet in The Force Awakens, which is because he's got he puts his helmet on the ashes of Darth Vader, and then he's sitting there with the charred helmet. Yep. He's like, "Show me." And this is the first time where we're all like, "Wait, does the dark side do this kind of stuff?" They're the bad guys. Do they get to like last? And also, Darth Vader turned, like he's Anakin now. He's of course goes, "How is this happening?" And it's Palpatine. It was always Palpatine.
Always in the shadows.
Oh. Jay, what did you want to say?
I'm waiting for Beaumont Ken to walk in here and say like, "Dark science, magic, secrets only the Sith knew."
Natural.
Yeah, give Rose more screen time, dude. No, okay.
Poor Rose.
What was I gonna say? I don't know. I derailed myself because now all I can think about is Charlie from Lost.
Oh my God! Well,
I love him. I love him.
I was talking about essentially how like the biggest mistake Anakin ever made was listening to that side of the Force. He was being greedy in terms of what he wanted. He wanted to save Padme's life for himself, which is interesting. He was trying to. It's kind of funny because this is where The Rise of Skywalker does a lot of things really well, where Anakin failed for selfish reasons, trying to save Padme for himself. Kylo Ren is then the one that really achieves Anakin's goal with saving the one he loved through means of selflessness. He gave himself to her in order to stay alive, in order for her to be the one that carries the tradition.
Although I think Vader absolutely does that.
In the end,
he the whole thing is he wants Padme and this greed and everything. But then it is that same love. But instead of an obsessive, unhealthy infatuation love for Padme, it is a genuine, selfless, caring love for Luke that brings him back. So, the inversion of that, like an unhealthy love versus a healthy love, are the ways that, bring him, back and forth from light to dark.
Well,
or dark to light, whichever way.
This is a good point to be made. Is the Force essentially what we would consider love? Now that sounds really weird, but like the love is maybe do strange things. Honestly, not in terms of like I haven't like go killed a lamb for love, but I've definitely like, sacrificed a lot of time, a lot of money, a lot of my personal interest, a lot of anything for love. And this could be the love I have for Katie, but it also could be the love I have for my mother, or the love I have for teaching. Like I would find a way to work Star Wars into every lesson, but you can't do that. Like that's the thing, is the
Challenge
Force a weird. Yeah, exactly. Is the Force a weird way of love? Is this the power that binds us all together? Is that what the Force is? Is it love? Because I love Jerry. Jerry and I are nowhere near each other. Jerry and I literally live across the state. But if I had to make a phone call about an emergency, I bet Jerry would be one of the first people to answer, just because it's how he is. He loves me.
Not if you need a ride to a hospital or anything, though.
No,
because that might take a little. I'd have to catch a flight, but
Yes.
It's like, okay, give me 12 hours. So, no.
Yeah.
Hey, I think you're on that. I think we were talking a little bit about like friendship and stuff, how Palpatine doesn't understand friendship and stuff.
Yeah.
He thinks that friendship and that attachments to like good, healthy, like relationships with people, that you're not manipulating them, you're letting them be themselves, and you're like, he thinks that that's foolish, right? Like he thinks that all of that is dumb, which to me. And if I guess, are we going to try to, maybe we're getting into the difference between the Jedi and the Sith, and the light side and the dark side, right? Is like, to me, it's like the difference between like selfishness and selflessness. Yeah. Especially with what you're talking about with two Darksiders, right? Who became good and stuff. But like you've got Anakin who goes bad because he's trying to save his wife. And, Ben comes back to the light, and he succeeds in what Anakin wanted to do by like bringing Rey back again, because he was selfless and gave of himself and stuff. Yeah. And so it's just like, that's what seems to power both sides of the Force, is those two opposite opposing forces. Is if you like embrace your selfishness, you can have all these crazy, scary, like monstrous powers. Or if you use your true selflessness, you can be more powerful than we can possibly imagine.
Beautiful.
Well, I'm here every Saturday on the Bombadcast. Come check me out.
Like this is where like the religion aspect comes in, and I know Troy's got some cool notes prepared for this part, because if I studied Catholicism my whole life, and I wouldn't say I know a lot about it. I know as much as a 25-year-old who studied it his whole life would know. So it's not like I'm well versed in it, but I know my way around it in terms of like story. And it's weird because the idea of the chosen one is something that's very much established in the Old Testament, that the person who would come and save everyone's sins is going to be the son of God. And it's so weird that you can then place a lot of these very beautiful, I guess, belief systems into Star Wars and Star Wars overall philosophy too, because for the longest time, Anakin was the chosen one. And what does that phrase even mean? And he was born of a virgin mother. Like, it's so many aspects of Catholicism are thrown in right there. And then it's really weird because with the sequel trilogy now, we've got another almost figure of dealing with Catholicism. You've got, and I wouldn't even know what to claim Kylo Ren as, but he has a very Christ-like figure. He gives away himself, to save the one he loves, or he saves the cause that she believes in too. And it's weird because he does it, and in Rey's eyes, he dies a martyr, essentially, but in the eyes of others, which will be an interesting thing to be explored after the sequel trilogy, like, he's still a bad guy. Same with Vader. Vader died a martyr as well. He gave up himself to save Luke from the evils of Palpatine. So it's very beautiful when these stories echo each other, much less the fact that we get it now with completely different stories, and different people telling these stories. It's really beautiful. And Troy, what was some things you want to mention in terms of religion about this? Because you've got some cool things prepared for us.
Yeah, well, I think in terms of when you're talking about with the Judeo-Christian tradition, I think George Lucas did a very good job of being insightful enough to sort of pick on what are sort of the universal themes that you can find throughout religions across the world in terms of this. The virgin birth is certainly significant for Christianity, obviously. But, there's virgin births in other mythologies and things of that nature. But this idea of, sacrifice and those sorts of things, you can find everywhere. In this idea of good and evil is a very Abrahamic, the Western traditions, Judaism, Christianity, and Islam. You get this whole there is good and there is evil, whereas and you certainly get that in some Eastern religions too. But then if you look at sort of Taoism and Buddhism, which are sort of, I think, some of the most tangible influences on what George Lucas had in mind when he's talking about the Force, you get a slightly different way of looking at it. I think he did a good job of synthesizing all of those things. So when you talk about take Taoism for instance, I started getting into other religions, started reading, I was like, well, there's more out there. I want to see, I want to know what other people believe. I was just an edgy teenager. I was like, Buddhism's the way, man, all that kind of stuff. And it is a significant, it is significant. And it's something, world religions is something everybody should take, I believe.
Oh yeah.
Or Absolutely. At least, maybe not as a formal class, but just, investigate so that you can have, respect and empathy and understanding for everyone, whether you're religious, a-religious, what have you. But Taoism, let's go back to that, this is where, as I start getting into some of these, talk about what some of these religions that very clearly had an influence on Lucas, I'm going to say some things and I'm going to say them so very wrong, and I'm going to have to beg the internet for forgiveness because I do not speak. I've studied language, but it has not been any Eastern languages. But Taoism is sort of is focused on the Tao, which the best way to translate is, you could translate as the way. And it's this idea that there is this sort of natural force guiding everything, and that to achieve spiritual enlightenment, you must make yourself in tune with nature. And this is the one where we get the famous yin and yang, this idea that everything is sort of in this push and pull, and there's, male and female, day and night, all of these sorts of things that cycle, and that you have to be in tune with that. And it's, as people who, whether you're religious or not, if you grow up in, America, Europe, what is generally referred to as the West, you're going to think of immediately go to, good and evil, light and dark. That's really not what it's about, even though there is very clearly good and evil in Star Wars. The yin and the yang isn't about this idea that good and evil are in constant tension. You can certainly believe that, but it's more about the fact, there is no hard ethical system that Taoist teaching prescribes the way you get the Ten Commandments or anything like that, or the Mosaic law, or the rest of the Mosaic law or Islamic law. It is all about becoming in tune with nature, and that will lead you, to enlightenment and happiness. And this idea, it's called, this is so, not only does that, this sort of, there's this life energy, one of the fundamental aspects of Taoism is qi, which is usually spelled Q-I. And if you doubt for a second that George Lucas was thinking about this stuff, something very integral to Taoism and sort of, Eastern mysticism is I'm going to say this, I believe it's Qigong. And it's Q-I, it's Americanized as Q-I space G-O-N-G. And if that's not Qui-Gon, then I don't know what is.
Right.
He's like, well, I'm just gonna pull stuff, from everywhere. And it literally translates to life energy cultivation. And there's sort of legends that have, aren't really essential to practicing Taoism, of, ancient Taoist sages, lifting things with their mind and it becoming so in tune with the way that they extend their lives way past, and have influence way past the natural order of things. And this idea that there's sort of chi, this life energy that permeates the universe that we can cultivate, and when we cultivate that through various practice, through Eastern medicine, and it's very Qigong is very related to Tai Chi in that regard.
Well, I want to bring up
very
one thing.
much,
It's super important, though, to this, because we've seen now in Star Wars, it's gotten a little bit different with the new canon, but we've got things now where, like, of course, there's the dark side and there's a light side. That's always been established. But now we're getting things like, the Zepho in Fallen Order. They believe in the Force, but they don't call it the Force. The same with the Wookiees. They've got these things now established in canon where, yes, there is certain aspects of the Force, and it's not so black or white in these other I guess sects of religion, these things that like of course, if you've got these Sith cultists that obviously follow the Sith teachings, which would manifest more of the darker side of energy, but also the emotional side, which I think is super important in Star Wars and in our life. It's important to feel emotionally invested in things. And that's where it gets really interesting. I don't know, like that a lot of the things also in Rebels, you got the Jedi Bendu, which now is the Bendu on the middle. Yep. So like what it's entirely up for interpretation as to which side you choose and what that side even means to you. Because a lot of what Vader, it's selfish, but like he loves someone so much he's willing to risk everything he can. That is kind of selfless in a weird way, because he's doing his best to, I don't know, like achieve this and make something happen. And it might not be the most moral way, but yeah, I feel like a lot of these new stories and the way they're telling stories is really interesting, because it's not just from one huge perspective. It's this weird umbrella of perspectives now.
And so I think that is significant, that there's this idea that I am removing myself from light or dark. And like I was just saying, like Taoism, and I think, the Force in general, one of the things I hated the most after The Force Awakens was this theory that like Kylo killed Han and Han let him so that he could like achieve like light and dark, and you have to have both to win. Like that's absurd, and it's antithetical to what Star Wars is. But there is this idea of, I am not going to act. So there is, the central tenet of Star Wars is like there is the dark side. There is, evil. There are people who seek to do wrong in the world.
Yes.
And we can explain that once we get into like specific Jedi and Sith, we'll get into that. But then there are people who do nothing. And even that goes back into, you can talk about Taoism, the central tenet of like Wu Wei, which sometimes gets translated as non-action. And then sometimes, this idea that I'm going to remove myself. But I think what a lot of scholars would agree, a better translation is effortless action. So you are ultimately making yourself so in tune with nature, with the Tao, that you are acting in the way that the Force, that the Tao, what have you, wants. And that's ultimately kind of like what a Jedi is. A Jedi becomes so in tune with the Force that they can do. And that's why, like when Yoda lifts the X-Wing, it doesn't matter what his size is, because he is totally removed, right? He has the Force is his ally. He has removed himself, and that's do or do not. There is no try. Trying is effort, right? It's about yourself. I am going to do this. Whereas, it's this more like we are able to do these things because we are in tune with nature and what the Force wants. And I think it's very interesting what you say about Anakin. Like he loves this person so much. And I think a lot of it has to do with the fact that he's born a slave. And that he's known nothing but harshness his entire life, and he's seen all these people with possessions, and Shmi, this loving person who he values so much, he and she have had nothing. And so then then he goes straight to Jediism, which is still like this asceticism, this I'm going to have nothing, but for an entirely different reason. So he never has anything.
Yeah.
And then when he has Padme, and I know it's kind of terrible to talk about relationships in that way, but that's what it is. And because that was his life, he had this unhealthy relationship with her where he becomes obsessed with her and infatuated with her, and she belongs to him, and I'm going to actively try to subvert the natural order of things and make my will happen instead of whatever the Force may be telling me
telling me exactly. And I think that's huge because there's a lot of moments in Revenge of the Sith where Anakin has a choice, and he doesn't do what Qui-Gon does, which is interesting. He doesn't meditate. He doesn't take a moment to think about it. I hear Jack purring over the microphone.
Oh, sorry, everybody.
No, it was so awesome. But,
he decided he wants to be here, so he's really interested in religion as well.
So like, I don't know. There's a lot of characters now in Star Wars that they're I guess we've said it on this show, the most Jedi to ever Jedi, and I'm sure we all have our very own opinions as to what that means, and we have our own choice too, because it's weird. Like, I've been rewatching a little bit of Rebels, and like, damn it, if Kanan is so zen, like Kanan's so good. So
by the end, man, yeah. I
don't know, like Jerry, did you want to bring you up? Because I think you're just still Ahsoka, but Troy, I think, has a curveball for us with something. But
Jerry, well, it's funny that you bring up because Ahsoka is another one of those names where it's like I see what you did. Ahsoka is named after Ashoka, who was like an Indian ruler. An ancient Indian ruler, and he's conquering what is now known as India, and he conquers the kingdom of Kalinga. And like, when he sees the absolute suffering of these people that his army has inflicted, he converts to Buddhism, which is all very we can do a deep dive on Buddhism later when we talk about Jedi. But it's all very about like withdrawing yourself and everything like that. He sees all of this suffering because of war, and then has a religious conversion, which I think is that, like, they named Ahsoka what they did completely on purpose.
Yeah.
Because of her character and what she goes through during the Clone War and then the Jedi Order and all of that.
Yeah, definitely.
Absolutely. And also Ian McDiarmid calls her Ashoka Tano in Rebels, and so
because I think that is like the way it's supposed to be pronounced. But again, I'm so very not an expert on pronunciation of anything really.
Yeah,
he's probably like, oh,
I don't even pronounce English correctly
the
half
Indian
the time.
Yes.
Jerry, the most Jedi to ever Jedi, because I think yours was Ahsoka the last time we got into it with Eric, actually, when he was on the show. But I think mine's changed a little bit now after some, I guess, I don't know, contemplating on it recently.
I think, and see, I think I had even gone off of that track back to like Rey or something. I think Rey was who I had said before. Yeah, Ahsoka, and then Qui-Gon was before that, and all of that. I don't know. I think I might give it back to Ahsoka and everything, because again, we've got a lot of Rey's journey and stuff, but we've seen Ahsoka, and we will most likely this fall see Ahsoka as well. Yes, we'll see in live action. Holy crap! We already had her in live action technically because she talked to Rey, so I count it, but that's just me.
No, it's totally there.
Yeah, totally.
It's the world between worlds.
Exactly.
There are all the voices to reach. It's the cosmic force. It's time.
There we go.
There
and everything. And they're all reaching out.
The cosmic force is ooky spooky stuff, right?
And it feeds into the. And that's the real yin and yang, right? Is the living force and the cosmic force cycling together.
Right. Mm-hmm. But I think I would have to give it to, because we've seen Ahsoka where she's like not necessarily a master, right? It's like very wizened and very like she's helping like Ezra and stuff like that, and even in, I think, because it was after even after she leaves the Jedi Order and just before in the Siege of Mandalore, man, like she was just, I think that's really what made me go like, wow, she is just. The way she tried to protect all of her men and all of that stuff, man. I think after. I'm still going. I'm still going Ashoka, whichever.
Ashoka.
Because
I mean, just her name's Ahsoka in the show. Just call her that. She's not the actual Indian ruler.
I'll call her Ahsoka.
You call her what you want. Whatever makes you happy, man.
I'll call her that, but I have called her Ashoka before because of Ian McDermott in the season finale or the series finale of Rebels and stuff. Because Ashoka Tano. I'd have to give it because just the whole thing about her, like the way she tries to fight for Rex, and she does not want to kill any of the men. As few men as she has to kill with Order 66, she does her best to not do it. And I'm right now just like wanting to go and rewatch that, even though I rewatched it 500 times when it came out. So, but
yeah, I feel like now with canon, we've gotten this weird, I guess, addition of people that we never would have had in terms of like you've got all these different outlets to approach what does it mean to be a Jedi, and the sequel trilogy has really made me rethink a lot of it too, because it can be black and white, but it also can be really in the middle, and Ahsoka kind of teeters on that too. She's emotional, and she's that the Jedi Order, being the thing that makes her leave is a hard thing for her. And she still is one with the Force, even after losing the title of Jedi. She is still, in a weird way, one of the most Jedi to ever Jedi. And now we've got Kanan, being a character that you can often rely on for philosophical and spiritual, motifs, like he's blind, but he still can use the Force to see. That's a heavy thing. For 2 seasons straight, they made that work, and he defends blaster bolts that way. And like, it's probably one of the first times we ever got that with a lot of context, and he sacrifices himself yet again to save the ones he loves, who will move on and do bigger things. And Ezra's going to be the one that I hope we get another big story with in the future, where we'll
so much.
Yeah, because Ezra's a weird one. Ezra's the one kind of in the middle. He's got a weird outlook. He's very emotional, but he's also very spiritual and very grounded. And if it's not for Kanan, I think I'm right now between Qui-Gon and Kanan. And I don't know if I can ever find a happy medium ground, because Qui-Gon's one of the ones that's guided Anakin spiritually so well. And like, he went against the council. He's like, he might be too old, but if he is, that's my mistake. And Qui-Gon obviously made a mistake. Like and I'm sure he admits it now. And maybe we'll get some more insight on Qui-Gon from the Kenobi series, which would be so cool and so special, because he was the first one to figure out, using the Force as a way to come back and have a second chance and be able to communicate with the living. And that is the cosmic force there. He found a way to speak through the cosmic force, which is really kind of beautiful. And maybe we'll get that with Ahsoka. I don't know. I think it's a very powerful thing that we will have more of in the future, which is going to be cool for storytelling. But Troy, you haven't had this opportunity, and I know it's probably eating you alive, but who is the most Jedi to ever Jedi in your opinion?
So I think it's a really interesting question, because it does beg the question, what is a Jedi? And you look at all these important Jedi. Is it Mace? Is it Obi-Wan? Is it Yoda? Is it Luke? Is it Rey? Is it Qui-Gon? And you look at like what they all sort of stand for, and then I think. I was talking to you about the Mace Windu sort of like embodies like everything that has become corrupt about the Jedi Order. He's still like a noble and good character, but he's powerful, and he's a general in the war, and he doesn't trust anyone. And it's because his lack of trust in anything and his preoccupation with politics is because the Jedi have become political. They've become whatever this weird relationship is. It seems like it starts with like the idea that like the Jedi think that democracy is good, which it is. I mean, people not being subjects of a dictator is a really great idea, and the Jedi want to propagate that. But like over time, the moral of Star Wars is that politics corrupts, I think. If there is, there are several obvious overarching morals, but I think that's a significant. Maybe of the prequels, it is that politics corrupts.
It is.
George Lucas is a child of the '60s, right? He was a hippie.
Oh yeah, it's all about.
He just decided to make movies instead of go to Woodstock, right? You know. Like the whole thing is all him saying like, "Don't trust the system, man. Don't trust the system."
No.
Like it's.
Whereas Qui-Gon is sort of like, and maybe he is the most, because he rejects all of that, right? He recognizes that like there's a place for compassion that isn't, this sort of obsessive problem that Anakin runs into, but that there's compassion, there's caring, and that supersedes this attachment to, this attachment to the code and to the system, as you want to call it, the man, this attachment to that the Jedi have that, the Jedi Order has become is just as problematic as an attachment to, a person or money or whatever you want to choose as your vice. And then you look at Obi-Wan, who is sort of like the knight in shining armor and like the ideal of like what the old Jedi Order is supposed to be, right? Like he embodies all of these virtues, and he's still like, he doesn't quite get it as much as Qui-Gon, but like I know Eric pointed out when y'all were talking about that last season of the Clone Wars, when he says the Council is asking you, that's like when he's sort of becoming Qui-Gon, but he never really, I don't think, fully gets it to the extent that Qui-Gon did, but he's still like is sort of like the epitome of a Jedi. So maybe that means you're the most Jedi to ever Jedi. I want to say it's Yoda. Because I love Yoda so much, and Yoda's the one who learns, right? Yoda was very much for 900 years was like the face of the Jedi Order, but then he learns and he realized that this attachment to politics led them down a path where they were propagating war and propagating suffering. And like, what is the first like truism that Yoda gives to Luke in Empire? After he says, "Oh wait, put your weapon. I mean you no harm," but he asks him why he's here, and Luke says, I'm looking for a great warrior. Yoda says, warrior. War does not make one great, because he knows, man. He knows
from that.
War doesn't make you great. Like the first like lesson he teaches Luke is that's not what this is. I am. Look at me. I am so very not like Jedi, adventure, war. Those things don't go together. Jedi is separate from all of those things. But I think it is Luke who is the most Jedi to ever Jedi.
Yeah. Okay.
Because Luke throws away the lightsaber, and when you talk, I'm bringing it back now to the very beginning, when you said like what movie.
I like where this is going.
What movie like furthered the Force the most for you? And I love The Last Jedi. Because it could have very easily went to like this whole sort of pop culture thing where it's like, yeah, man, dude, like you need the light side and the dark side to win, like this sort of fan theory, and it didn't. And it showed you, it took you to the brink of like, what are the Jedi? Do they matter anymore? And then there is a renewal of it. And I think that that's important. But Return of the Jedi is the ultimate moment, because Luke throws, when Luke, he beats Vader down and he has him, he's going to kill him. And then in that moment he stops and he sees that Vader is the same as him.
Oh, it's awesome. Such a good moment.
And good, and Palpatine's coming down. And it's not about, in this moment, it's not about Vader, it's not about Palpatine, it's not about Luke. He throws the lightsaber away. He says, I'm not going to fight anything. I am not going to be what you want me to be, because that is the Emperor, right? That is the dark side. It's subverting others to your will. Like the nature of the dark side is like you make, instead of going the other way, like we were talking about, like making yourself in tune with nature and in tune with whatever this force is and everything, and following the action of that and protecting others, and those sorts of things. I am making myself the center of the Force, and everything through my knowledge of it, I will make myself the center, and everything will bend to my will. And that's what Palpatine has done, right? He's bent Vader to his will. And Luke says, you can kill me, you can do whatever, but you will not bend me to your will. And that's the ultimate defeat of Palpatine, right? It is what he does best, is the manipulation and the bending and the conniving. You can't do it to me, because I am a Jedi.
Yeah.
And that is the most Jedi to ever Jedi. And then you still get character development on top of that, where you see where Luke was at the mountaintop, like the spiritual mountaintop right there, right? Where I was like, I am fully accepting of whatever the Force will do to me, but I'm not going to be bent by anything other than the Force. And then you have, Kylo and all the sadness that comes, and he says, well, all right, fine, then I'm not going to do anything, right? Because I was at that mountaintop and I tried to bring others there with me and I failed, so I'm going to stay up here on my literal mountaintop. and then Yoda, and gosh, I love Yoda so much.
Oh, dude.
Yoda comes back and he says, no, it's about what they grow beyond. You know, you don't want them to be here. You don't want them to be standing with you. You want them to move forward.
I like that, Troy.
Yeah, and so maybe Yoda is the most Jedi ever Jedi, because Yoda's the one that like really learns. But Luke, but then Luke in his final sacrifice is once again like, I'm standing in front of you, and I'm not going to fight you. I'm not going to come to you. I'm not going to give you your status. I'm not going to do anything. I'm not going to let your will infect others. I'm going to make a stand and be here and be resolute with the will of the Force. So Luke is the most Jedi that ever Jedi.
That's pretty good. That's a pretty convincing argument. I'm not gonna lie.
I'm down with that. I am very down with that.
It's weird because TLJ is one of these movies that everyone wants to get upset about, and I think after I first watched it, I wasn't so upset about it. It more really questioned how I thought, and like I feel like this movie is going to be one of the ones everyone looks back at Empire Strikes Back in terms of, fondly. I mean, they're going to be, I think upon a release, it has a good bit of divisiveness, but when people grow up with these movies and they get the lessons that we don't get out of them right now, these young generations going to come in, have a very different perspective of what the Force means to them simply because of that movie. And it's weird because the Force, yes, like you said, Troy, is something that guides you, and it's something that you can also control like Palpatine does, but the Force is also a very special power that not many people get, and TLJ is one of the first times that made me like really realize that whenever they had the Force Skype, and then Luke doesn't see the Force Skype. Luke's like, what are you talking? What's going on? What happened there? And it's such a cool moment because the Force, even though Luke is so strong with it and he could shut himself off from it, he still couldn't sense what was happening. And the Force is not just something that's spiritual. It also really manifests in real life. And we see that when Luke is on Crate, but he's not really there. Or when Kylo Ren's in the hut, but he's not really there. And then we got one of the best parts in The Rise of Skywalker, the whole movie, is when they're able to pass things through the Force. And that's going to be such a cool aspect to explore in the future, because I mean, this is where my next point comes in, this idea of midichlorians, but like when he passed it through the Force, it's just so, it makes sense because they have such a strong bond. And I like that The Rise of Skywalker and TLJ taught us something that we never knew, that people can be literally bonded to the Force, like the dyad in the Force, which is actually a very old Joseph Campbell, I guess, type of philosophy. And it also brings up the yin and yang thing you brought up, Troy. It's like this idea of these things having to coexist just because, and for a dyad to happen, it's once in a very long time, apparently, in terms of Star Wars. But I don't know, you can almost see a dyad as your soulmate in terms of Star Wars too. And I don't know, I the idea of soulmate's very interesting. I've encountered things in my life where I'm like, man, I felt like I've known this person my whole life. And I think that's a weird spiritual thing that I often think about, and it's kind of Star Warsy in terms of like, sometimes you can just hit it off with people. Like when I first met Jerry, boom, I don't know what it was, but it's something that's unexplainable.
I think it was that I never left you and Katie's side on Friday. So I was, I just bonded myself to you. So like a parasite, much like midichlorians.
Yes. Okay. Exactly. And
parasite versus symbiotes.
Symbiotes.
Yes.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Symbiote. Not. Yeah. Yeah. Sorry.
That's a good point though, Troy. Parasite versus symbiotes, because I teach this concept in science all the time. Symbiotic relationships are super important because symbiotic is when they both benefit. Parasitic is when one benefits, the other one gets hurt. Then you have I forget. There's a second one. Troy might even know it more than I do. But the second one is when one benefits, the other one doesn't benefit at all, and it's interesting because right now I think the term midichlorians was introduced in the Phantom Menace, and a lot of people didn't like it because it almost diminishes the mysticism of the Force. But to me, when I study any sort of life, I think about how incredible it is. The transfer of energy is something that I almost obsess with now, that I didn't even think about 2 years ago. I never thought about it, but this concept of like, you're one with the universe because of what you're made of is super profound. And like, I had a moment yesterday, I'm not even kidding, I was eating a can of tuna and I was thinking, this tuna had gone through so much to get into this can that I am now consuming, and I am literally taking in a part of it. And like that is on an atomic level very profound, because this thing lived through the water. It ate things that came of the water. It took in sunlight, and then I take it in and I get this same exact energy that it had once had. There's a lot of vitamins in tuna. So all these vitamins that this tuna had developed in its body, I am now getting from it. And that's where the midichlorians come in, because on a very microscopic level, we're nothing but a bunch of cells that work and create this reality we know. Same with atoms. Like, everything physical in this room around me is all made of very small quarks and very small things.
You're going George.
This is where I'm going. I'm going George, because this is where I think George's movie
for the next one.
I really think George had something very interesting going on. Now that I've kind of developed this thought of like midichlorians in the Plagueis novel, it's so beautiful, because Plagueis in the novel, I won't give anything away, it's one of the best books, I think, honest to God, for what it does for the Phantom Menace and what it does in terms of storytelling. Yeah, you've listened to it, you've read it.
I see. We've talked. I'm way too ADHD for audiobooks.
Yeah.
I am.
Okay. We talked about that. Yeah.
And I'm almost too ADHD. I love reading. English teacher loves reading. Breaking news. Print the papers. But I read that one like a long time ago.
Yeah.
Because that's an old Legends book, and so for half a second I was like, "Is there canon Plagueis? Because if so, sign me up."
Sure.
But no, I read that a long time ago, and then there's kind of but they put his droid in was it the Tarkin book or something?
I think so.
Plagueis' droid is in the new canon, which kind of makes the old one. There's nothing in it that diametrically opposes.
No,
it could be
the way a lot
in,
of the old
right.
EU does, opposes itself, let alone the new canon.
Yeah.
But anyway, we're going down we're going down a tangent. I don't even remember what I was about to say. We were talking about Plagueis.
Midichlorians.
Midichlorians, yeah. So I guess essentially what I was going to get at was the fact that in this novel, Plagueis observes death in all different types of species. He has this one where he observes death in an animal. He observes a death within himself, and he also observes death, D-E-A-T-H. He observes the death of another Force user, and he literally takes it and studies how the midichlorians react. Are they scared? Are these microorganisms, that are feeding life to these creatures? Is it important that they, also die and they become one with the Force? And Plagueis discovers that it's very interesting, because the will of the Force, in terms of that book, is controlled by the user, but it's allowed by the midichlorians. Yep. So if I were going to try to move my webcam with my mind, which I cannot do, the midichlorians within me are not allowing me to do it. You have to be in tune with yourself. You have to know who you are in order for you to be able to tap into this power. And I think for the Jedi, it comes easier. I think if you believe in a Jedi point of view, it might be easier to achieve. But if you believe in a Sith point of view, it's also kind of crazy, because the whole book's about how Palpatine pretty much trumps Plagueis in the end. And literally, the rule of two is a very flawed thing. And this is where it gets super interesting, because it's been revealed now in the Rise of Skywalker novel that the same thing Plagueis did to try to cheat and achieve a greater life, or live beyond death, he couldn't do it because he couldn't figure out the magic, I guess the cane sauce. He couldn't figure out the formula to do it. And then the
cane sauce is anchovies.
Yes, you know that he worked at Cane's. It's a restaurant local to here.
They're just throwing anchovies in there.
Yes.
If you find the right one, you can see the little skeleton.
Perfect. Exactly. No,
that's not true.
That's not true. But it's weird because the Phantom Menace set up some midichlorians. Then Revenge of the Sith kind of elaborates on it. Then we kind of don't hear that much from it. This book is one of the first things that made me question it, because all life does come from cells. I mean, when your parents decided to join together and share the same haploid cells diploid cells to make a haploid cell. That within itself, that conception of life was two cells forming and making one cell. So what I'm getting at essentially is without that one cell, there would be no you. And all these cells that make up your skin, that make up your brain, that make up your lips, that make up everything is all used by energy. Yes, that is all used by energy that is taken in by you. So in a weird way, midichlorians have, I think, almost changed my understanding of the Force. And studying science has changed my understanding of the Force. And it makes me understand how it's actually makes more sense now. If you think about it in terms of energy and how you take and give out energy, that midichlorians are extremely crucial in that. I don't know. I was once the person that was like midichlorians are stupid. They were talking about that in high school, but now I'm like, damn, if they don't make more sense, Jesus, it clicks for me now. I don't know.
The mitochondria are the powerhouse of the cell, and the midichlorians are the powerhouse of the Force.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
But the interesting thing is, I haven't heard Jerry Bear talk enough today.
Shucks. I'm sitting here listening to two fine educators just educate me. What do you want to hear about? What about
the midichlorians?
What do you think about midichlorians? I have my PowerPoint to give later, but I want to hear from you.
Well, just like I was saying earlier, it's never really bothered me. Yeah, it was. He needed something to show like that Anakin was really powerful in the Force, right?
Yes.
And I don't know. It's Scott. You said you were upset about it in high school. We talked about it in high school. It's almost as if high schoolers were the ones who were mad about it back in the day, or guys who lived in their mother's basements. Sorry, Pete. I'm joking. I know. Yeah, Pete wasn't living in his mom's basement when he saw it. But I've never had a problem with that. To me, and the thing that I came up with whenever people started having issues with it,
sure,
they're like, well, I thought the Force was, mystical, and now all of a sudden it was magic, and now all of a sudden got these cells in it. It's how much cells you have. I'm like, no, like everyone has the midichlorians. It's almost like that, like you're saying, the transfer of energy. It's like that's what they are channeled through. It's the pathway. It's not the Force itself. It's just that's the biological reason why you feel it and stuff like that.
Well, if Anakin has more midichlorians, it's not to say he is stronger in the Force, because he's not. Obviously, Yoda might be one of the strongest ones, but he might have the ability to channel it better than most other Jedi do. Well, his
reception could be better if he works on it, right?
Yes.
He kind of. I don't even like that saying that.
But it's weird because if you think about Palpatine too, they never got Palpatine's blood sample. Palpatine could be the one that's literally has the most midichlorian count.
Most Jedi to ever Jedi?
Yes, in a weird way.
Certainly the most Sith to ever Sith.
He is that is undeniable.
You gotta make sure not to get your letters mixed up in that. The most Sith to ever Sith.
She sells seashells by the Sith sells seashells by the Sith.
By the shish. I don't know, like, because that's again. Like I said earlier, my philosophy in the Force, it's always been funny to me how, like, I know, like, we want to separate spiritual, physical, right?
Of course.
That's like our natural inclination because it seems beyond us. But at the same time, you look at the nature
product of the scientific revolution and the Enlightenment.
Right. Yeah. But, to me, I look just more big picture at they're both a part of life, right?
Yep.
If you believe the spiritual exists, right, and then you have all these physical things, and there can be physical manifestations of spiritual things. Who's to like? It's all part of the tapestry to me, and so it's never been something that has made me feel like it's not mystical. In fact, it makes the mystery even more like, whoa. Like
it does.
If they discovered, like, well, your pituitary gland is actually where the soul is, or whatever, in science and stuff. Like, I wouldn't be like, well, that takes the mysticism out of it. I'd be like, whoa, why?
It almost adds the layer. You're right.
It's not
it
in the
almost
spleen.
adds.
Again, it's just process. It's how it works. It's like, this is why, and it's like, okay, yeah, it still doesn't disprove or anything like that to me,
No.
It doesn't ruin the magic, so to speak. And so
it almost adds to it. It almost makes you question more on a deeper level. Why did George decide to put midichlorians, and
why do these two worlds that we want to separate refuse to be separated?
Damn right, Jerry. That's a good point. That's really true. Oh, I like that. Troy, you gonna keep blowing my mind, brother? What you got?
So I think this idea of separating the spiritual and the physical is certainly like I said, it's because ever since the Enlightenment and the advent of the scientific method and all these things where we've learned so much about the world because you put the physical in a box.
Yeah.
And that is great and it's fantastic and we know so much about more about our lives, and it's meant that civilization has flourished. But you also have to be able to step away from that box and recognize that there is, without question, some sort of dimension to our existence that is other than our normal data. And you can even look at a philosopher like Sam Harris, who's an atheist, but still talks about meditation and mindfulness and sort of like there's a I hesitate to say spirituality, but he talks about these sort of enlightenment things. Now he talks about them from the point of view of what's happening with our brain chemistry and things like that. And maybe you can reduce it all down to that. Maybe you can't. That's I go back to when I talked about the academic side of philosophy is trying to reasonably argue whether you should believe that you can reduce everything down to atoms and quarks and stuff, or not. And that's it's obviously not what we're here to do today. But I don't think it. I think it's and so like I say, even people who don't believe in a personal creator, which the Force isn't personal in the way that the Abrahamic religions are. I think that's undeniable, and I think Star Wars does a very good job of encountering both in that cycle of the cosmic force and the living force. George, like I said, I said this earlier, George did a very good job of figuring out what was universal. Which you can find and people talk about. You talk about how the golden rule or some iteration of it is found in every major lasting world religions, whether it be ethical monotheism, whether it be polytheism, or whether it be religions like Taoism or Buddhism, which sometimes blur the line between what is religion and what is just like a life philosophy and things like that. You can find those sort of ethical principles in all of those things because religion is ultimately about what we value. And like I said at the very beginning, Star Wars is about what we value. It's about family, and it's about doing what's right, and it's about protecting those you love and preserving what you think is important, and about finding your place in this world. Am I supposed to just be this kid on Tatooine that stares at the suns, or is there something greater for me?
True.
And I think I said Star Wars about midi-chlorians, if nothing else, gives a biological reason why the Force runs in families.
That's true.
Luke and Leia and then Kylo are stronger with the Force because their father had midichlorians and so on and so forth. But then you argue, well, so is Luke half as strong? And I don't think that that's exactly how it works because,
no.
But it's the idea that you can trace these things through literature. And I made the mitochondria as the powerhouse of the cell joke, because that's the one thing that everybody knows. But if you remember your 7th grade science or whatever grade you learned,
don't ask me.
Biology. Eric and I had the greatest 7th grade science, who is now a colleague of mine, funnily enough, had the greatest middle school science teacher ever. And this is why I still remember this. But the idea, the mitochondria, most scientists believe that mitochondria used to be a separate cell than what our normal eukaryotes are. And they eventually melded together. And now the mitochondria, is the powerhouse. It helps synthesize various chemicals and things of that nature. There's probably some.
It makes ATP. It makes the energy. Yeah.
Yeah, there's someone out there that's that's such a gross oversimplification, but that's I'm I majored in literature and philosophy, not science, so I'm surprised I know this much.
It's okay. This is a Star Wars podcast. I don't think any of those people are listening.
By all accounts, I should just be sitting under a tree, unemployed, reading Shakespeare. That's what I should be doing, according to what I spent all my money studying. But anyway, I digress because like I said, I'm too ADHD for audiobooks. I'm too ADHD for podcasts. So just
No, you were making a good point though, because there's a lot of things that can be said about the Force being, this way of finding its way in family, right? And like I know it's also important to establish that the Force is interesting, because when you watch TLJ, we notice something very strange. Broom Boy at the very end. That was one of the coolest aha moments. Is when little dude was walking up and he just reached his hand and he grabbed that broom. And we're all like, "What?"
The one that, and everyone was like, automatically like, oh, he's gonna be in the next move. The next movie's gonna be like, and he's gonna help him discover.
It's about visual storytelling.
Because you want your main protagonist to have a name like Tamiri Blag. Just for real, his name.
Is that his name?
That's Tamiri Blag.
Gary the Canon Junkie.
Pablo. That one was all Pablo. So it's just funny. Broom Boy is a better name for a protagonist than like that's what he wears like a mask made of broom bristles or something, like swings from anyway.
I love that. But it's funny because TLJ laid so much on you, especially in that regard, and then they're like, here's this too, because you're thinking to yourself, man, like it's heavy because of the themes and it shows hopefulness. And I don't know, the Force is now, in a weird way, to kind of close out this whole discussion. Jack was very loud. I like the Force.
Did you
now.
hear him?
Yeah, it was very. Did he hit his head?
He's he bumped the desk. He bumped the desk. So I think he wants to be fed. So there you go, everybody. It's feeding time. It's feeding time. He's like, hey, you going to be done soon? Come on.
So,
sorry, buddy.
To close out this discussion, essentially, we know the Force now has taken on a lot of different meanings, and it's changing. And I wanted to leave everyone with this idea, because we've got all these new movies in the works, apparently. We've got the Kenobi show. We've got Mando Season 2. We've got apparently a sequel to Rebels in the works. We've got a bunch of things that we're not aware of. We got Taika's new movie. We've got a ton of stuff. And I wanted to ask you to kind of close this whole thing out. What is the future of the Force? Because the Mando did something very different than we did not expect. And I wouldn't mind kind of starting it, because that show was the one where I was like, they're not going to include the Force. There's no way. This is kind of stupid. And then they did, and they did it in the best way possible, because they did it from a mystical aspect again. They took it from a very mystery, like the idea that the Jedi were sorcerers was so cool, because I never thought about it that way. I'm like, I guess they are like wizards, like really, like truly
space wizards, man.
Space wizards versus space Nazis.
There we go. Exactly.
Space warlocks, right? Yeah, space Nazis. Yeah.
The child is one of the few characters that completely changed my opinion of the Force without any form of training to our knowledge. That little dude used his feelings because he knew something was going to happen, and he saved the Mandalorian from the Mudhorn. Okay. He then did it again when he tried to healed Grief Karga, but he also did something very interesting too that most people don't mention, is when Cara Dune was arm wrestling with the Mandalorian in that one scene.
Yeah.
The child didn't think anything but that's a threat to the person I love, and he started to choke her out. And I was like, that's great. Like, he knows, he does not know the dark side. He does not know the dark side. He does not know the light. And this is the future of the Force, is the fact that this child is neither aware of either side. He just knows what's happening and what's maybe not a good thing. Like when the flame trooper walks in and he just blows the fire, the child probably didn't think, well, I'm going to move this fire away. He just thought, I'm going to protect these people because these people need to be saved. And I don't know. The child is this weird enigma of things that I never thought I needed in Star Wars, but it's almost making me rethink everything I know about the Force. So, boys, what do you think about that? What recently has changed your perspective on all this? I don't know.
Truly wonderful, the mind of a child is.
Unless you're arm wrestling their dad, and then they will try to kill you.
I think the child is a very interesting concept, and it's a very similar concept to Rey when everyone was raging, like, why is she so powerful with no training? And it's like,
but they say nothing about a baby.
Yeah, but how long was they don't. But how long was Luke like in the you can make the argument that like the entire year or however long officially is in between A New Hope and Empire that Obi-Wan was Force Ghost training him, and that's how he learned the telekinesis in between movies and all that. So like Yoda was just putting the finishing touches. But like, I don't know. I think this goes back to the midi-chlorians thing, which I want to round that thought out as I talk about the future of the Force. You know, the reason people were upset with midi-chlorians, I think, is because it takes away from that aspect of the mysticism, and it takes away from that aspect that like I could be Luke Skywalker, right?
That's true.
But I don't think it, because like already it's like Luke. It's not Wedge. It's not any of his other random, kids sitting on Tatooine. It was Luke. But it's still the idea that maybe you did have the all these midi-chlorians. And this idea that, they're like that mitochondria or whatever, that like something about the evolution of life itself. When Yoda goes, going back to that 3-episode arc at the end of season 6 of Clone Wars, when he meets the priestesses, he says that it's one of the origins of life in the universe. Yeah. So like the midichlorians would have been, started this symbiotic maybe the midichlorians were the first organisms ever, and that's why they have this connection to the Force, and then they melded with all other life. So I don't think that it really detracts from the mysticism as so much as it gives an aspect of biology to the mysticism. But you still totally can be Luke when you're a kid, or even as an adult, and you're staring off into the sunset, and you're like, what is my purpose? And you just you reflect and you meditate or pray or whatever you want to call it, whatever your religious tradition that you subscribe to, whatever it is, and you find that in yourself, that there is something, whatever it is, you do have value and purpose in this world, and you can go out and you can help with that. And there are plenty of things in this world, Lord knows, that you can go out and help with. I don't think that midi-chlorians detracts from any of that, because you have genes, you have genetics, you are totally the byproduct of so many biological and psychological factors that you don't know, but you could still choose right now to go be a Jedi in the real world. And midi-chlorians does not destroy that. And so I think and I think that is sort of, part of me doesn't want like Force lore to happen anymore unless it's George Lucas writing it, because it's his thing, man. It's his child. Or Dave. But or Dave. If Dave does it, I'm fine, because he is Dave is. So if it's not Dave, and I don't know if the World Between Worlds was a George thing that George told Dave about, or if it was all a Dave thing. But it works, man. So I don't know. I'm very cautious about Force lore, but then the idea of like the child, where like whatever it is about this species that is so in tune with the Force and is so in tune with nature, that without this understanding of what people are and what values are and what morality is, that it still just does these things. I think that that's a really cool concept. And so and like I said, like the Force is what makes Star Wars. You can't have you could, in theory, have a show. You could have had The Mandalorian without a child, and it's just him doing bounty hunter stuff, and it like no Force, other than like maybe a random mention of like a Jedi being, in the rebellion or whatever. Yeah. No Force happening. Would it be the same? It would be missing something. I think fundamentally it would.
In a weird way, it would be, and we didn't know we needed it, which is the best part. That's what Star Wars is good about.
That's what John Favreau and Dave Filoni are giving you what you need.
Yeah, we didn't know we needed it, and it's a perspective now that challenges every thought that I've ever had, and like it's such an awesome thing, because people would almost want to deny it. And like, it's a cool thought too, because you've got Baby Yoda who exerted himself and he passes out every time he does something stronger than what he can do. And that's interesting, because Luke did the same thing. And that was very much newly introduced, that the Force cannot make you exert yourself. I mean, Ben Solo did it. He literally gave the rest of his life to save Rey, and he faded into the Force. So I don't know. I'm so eager to see where it can take us, Jay, where do you want it to take you? What are you looking forward to in the future of the Force?
I think we're going. I just wanted to. You know me. I like my Force stuff. I like my dark side stuff. Really weird and stuff.
Yes.
Like it is weird. Amalgamations of black magic and weird off the
Night Sister
really
stuff.
really well, like
really
Night
cool.
Sister stuff, but also like the really like Joseph Mengele style science and stuff. Like you're sewing the head of a cat onto a soldier to see if it like will not care about anything or whatever, you know, like you do weird stuff to like prolong life and all that. Like I like that part of Dark Side, and I love that what they've done in the Disney era, especially. I mean, just with Clone Wars too, like George was trying to as well. I think as people, when it comes to religion is just basically, or faith, or whatever philosophy you subscribe to, again, is being comfortable with the ununderstandable, right?
True. Yes. And
I love that they've been doing it. I think they've been making the Force so much. People are all trying to like put the pieces together. Like we did just now. We're not necessarily trying to put the pieces together to make it all fit together so we can understand it. But it's just cool to really think about these concepts and what does that mean? And that's more the point of it is being comfortable with that. I don't think it's possible to understand every aspect of the Force, right? You know, like that's what the Sith want to do, right? They want to like control. But I don't know. I think we're going to get some interesting stuff in the High Republic.
Yeah, you're right.
Era of stuff. I think we're gonna get some really interesting stuff. I can't tell you because because of what we've gotten so far. Luke projecting himself to Crate and fooling all of us. The exertion, the world between worlds. Is it time travel? Is it not? I subscribe to it's not technically time travel. But it's the whole thing of like Ahsoka they didn't time travel to save her. That's always how she got out. Right. Yeah. It's just weird theories and stuff like that. But I just want more of that. I love that. And again, that's the stuff that people are like, we want to understand it. I just hope that they don't try to, I don't know. Like maybe you could say like the midichlorians was trying to explain it, but again, I just feel like you keep opening the boxes,
sure,
and letting the stuff out and stuff, right? And it's not in a box. It's like look at the universe we're in. We're discovering new stuff all the time.
Oh,
it's
every day,
everything, and it's like we can't comprehend that. Something without end, right? Or nothingness or whatever. Like we can't even the concept of a god or gods or whatever who have never had a beginning and will never have an ending. They've just always been. What even is that?
Yeah.
Like you want to short circuit, like just spend 15 minutes really thinking about a being who never began and never will end. Whether you believe in it or not, the concept is just like, profound. What? That's I feel like, I don't know. I just want them to continue in the Force again, not like, hey, make it super Christian, make it like really make it really Buddhist, really do this, like keep it ambiguous and stuff like that. But just like, I don't know, keep going on the
challenge the thought.
Challenge it. What is it? Yeah. What does it mean? Why is it doing this? And come up with new crazy like aspects of it. What? That's something it can do, but please never make it about pulling down a Star Destroyer with your bare hand.
I get that.
Like a basketball and stuff. I mean, maybe it depends on how it's done, right? I'm not ever going to say never and stuff because that was cool in Force Unleashed, but I'm shell shocked again from the TLJ Wars.
Well, boyos, Jerry, I loved every point you made because you've got a very, I don't know, a great grasp on things like that. I really
very twisted sense of the world. So
it's important to make sure everyone's voice gets heard, and if you're a listener and you want to take a second, message us what you think, because it is one of those episodes that I feel like hopefully someone will listen to and take a lot away with, because there's a lot of things about the Force that there's still a lot of exploration to, and I don't know. I hope everyone had a chance to enjoy this. And fellas, any closing remarks? Troy, do you have anything you want to say? You're the creator of this, and you've damned all of us now, because now I'm gonna lay in bed, just be like this, this completely in deep thought. So Troy, thank you for doing this.
No, I just I'm listening to Jerry. Can you comprehend the profoundness of something that has no beginning or no end? And I'm like, well, the Latin for that is ex nihilo, and I had to study all of this. And it's a terrible thing, but it's a beautiful thing, because it makes you ponder your own actions. It makes you more mindful of your own actions. It makes you mindful of others' actions, and the role you play in this life that you have found yourself in. And that is the thing. I said it for the fifth time. Star Wars is about what we value, and Star Wars, like religion, ought to be transformative. It ought to make you a better person. That's what George Lucas wanted. That's what if there is a God, I think there is, but that's beside the point. If whatever religion you subscribe to, it should make you transformative. Star Wars should be transformative. It should make you a better person. And one of the ways it makes us a better person is it makes us, think about the fundamental issues of our lives. And I think that that's important. And I think that you should go out there and be the best Jedi that you can be.
There we go, Troy. That's how you end the podcast. Amen, brother.
Amen. Have you, and all my closing remarks have you heard the good news about our Lord and Savior Goldenrod? No?
He's going to be a permanent resident.
That's awesome.
Sorry, I had to share my faith as an Ewok. So
yeah, I forget you really believe in that.
I wore my Jiao Yaoza. This has nothing. Well, Jiao Yaoza, the Yuzums are supposed to be from Endor. Back in the day, they were. I wore my Jiao Yaoza mask to the store yesterday.
Nice.
And I only because I found my child is not frightened of it, and so I just go around her and she loves it. So
that's amazing.
Yeah.
Well, fellas, this was a deep and profound discussion. I'm elated to share this with everyone. And so if you're listening right now, make sure you subscribe to the Beyond the Blast Doors channel. Stay updated with everything going on in this crazy Star Wars world. And make sure you also subscribe to our podcast. If you're on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, whatever, subscribe. And
wherever fine podcasts are peddled.
Yes, and make sure you like and share this with your friends. If they have a different varying opinion, let them get in touch with us. I would love to hear their opinions on this, because it's something that's very I actually messaged, I think, both of y'all about this. It's very subjective, but it's also very objective in terms of what Star Wars means. So it's one of the few discussions that are super, I guess, established, but also very up for interpretation. And make sure you rate us 5 stars on iTunes, and make sure you review us as well. We love them reviews. We're going to do an episode where we read those soon. But if you really liked it, make sure you friend Troy on Facebook, and also make sure.
I don't know that I advocate that. Sure. Well, in the spirit of friendship and Jediism,
Just don't go there to tell him he mispronounced all those words from Dallas.
Yes, don't.
No. I want to learn.
Know how to
if
pronounce
you can tell me how to pronounce them. Don't pretend you are something you're not. But if you can tell me how to pronounce, I've read all this stuff. I haven't heard it. And I can't do the audiobook, Scotty. I just can't.
Those audiobook guys all the time, they don't even read it the right way.
No,
so
we don't.
Fine. They don't say it the right way. It's okay.
Well, if you also enjoyed this, make sure you join us on Patreon, and you'll get all kind of exclusive goodies from this, which could be a GIF maybe. And make sure you follow us on Beyond
the GIF.
GIF.
And then it's GIF or GIF.
GIF.
The guy who invented it says that it's GIF.
GIF.
And it's also not a giraffe. So there you go.
Whoa, I didn't know that wasn't even in the debate. Well,
I'm Jerry, not Gary.
That's GE. That's different.
It's with the G. Yeah, I know. It's everyone forgot that from first grade. I'm the only one who remembered because it's in my name. Screw you.
Well,
guys.
this is great.
Anyway.
And I love this discussion. And Troy, you're always welcome to come back on. So everyone,
Absolutely.
Absolutely. I'd love to come back. Maybe next time we can do, some mythology stuff and all that kind of stuff.
Hey.
Or talk about farts if you want to. It's whatever you want to talk about, honestly. Joking.
I'm a 7th and 8th grade teacher. I know all about farts.
Right, yeah, exactly. But guys and gals, Jerry, do you want to do the wonderful pleasure this time to sign all of us out for this episode of the Bombadcast?
Absolutely. First of all, Troy, again, thank you for coming on, man.
Thank you, T.
Seriously was a good time. I enjoyed. I was taking in a lot of knowledge and stuff, which is why I was silent and stuff. It's like, a wise man once said, just be slow to speak and quick to listen. Right. I think the wise man said that. It's in the Bible. But
all his life as he looked away to the horizon, never his mind on where he was.
Absolutely.
So you followed Yoda's teachings today. I'm proud of you.
I did. Very much.
Very mindful.
You gotta slow down and listen, guys. But most of all, you need to stay bombad.
You are all Bombad.